I used to think betrayal felt like a knife to the back. But no, it's worse. Betrayal is when the person who sleeps beside you every night quietly plans to take everything from you while you're still loving them with all your heart. My name is Alexander Wright. I'm 51 years old, CEO of a financial tech conglomerate headquartered in Boston. For 25 years, I've made a living forecasting risk, reading market patterns, and interpreting volatile graphs with cold logic. But nothing in my career taught me how to read the danger hidden in a familiar smile. This story isn't for pity. I'm not here to ask for sympathy. I'm here to confess something most people like me would never say aloud, that even a man with everything can still lose everything he thought was safe. To the world, I was a symbol of control. Strategic investor, 9-digit net worth, Forbes cover, no scandal, no chaos. I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't mess around. My life was meticulously organized to the minute. Every morning, I woke up at 5, ran 6 miles, read the Wall Street Journal over black coffee, and left the house by 6:45. Before I walked out the door, I'd kiss my wife, Sophia, on the forehead every single day. Sophia, 44, warm voice, soft brown eyes, gentle, almost too gentle for the world I operated in. But that's what I loved about her. She was never loud, never demanding, never competing. In a world of boardrooms and backstabbing, she felt like calm. She felt like home. We had been married for 12 years, no kids, no major drama. She never asked to be part of my business, never wanted to. She said, "You build the future, I'll keep the present steady." I believed her. I believed in her. I trusted her completely. I gave her co-signing rights to all our joint accounts. I let her in on every insurance policy, every long-term investment, not because she asked, but because I wanted her to know she was part of it all. Looking back, there were signs. The laptop screen that turned black when I entered the room, an alternate email account she said was just for tracking online orders, nights when she came home late from seeing old friends, or going to a massage place I'd never heard of. I never questioned her, because I was busy. The company had just gone public. International funding rounds were in full swing. I was flying to Berlin, Hong Kong, Dubai, negotiating numbers in rooms where silence was more expensive than gold. I didn't have time to worry about shadows at home, but the truth doesn't wait. I don't know what Sophia was thinking when she leaned in to kiss me goodnight, while a divorce petition sat on her laptop desktop. I don't know if her hands trembled when she printed wire transfer confirmations from a secret Cayman Islands account. I don't know, and honestly, I didn't even consider the possibility. Until one day, a single email sent to the wrong inbox, and just like that, my world started to unravel. It was just an email, a plain, dry message, no subject line, no greeting, just a PDF attachment labeled Draft and Settlement Final. I opened it absent-mindedly, assuming it was a legal file from our in-house team sent by mistake. But as the screen lit up and the document loaded, I saw my name, bold and clear, on the front page of a divorce petition, and just below it, Sophia Wright. My entire body froze. My heart didn't race. It stopped. For a few seconds, my eyes scanned the lines. Petitioner, Sophia Wright. Respondent, Alexander Wright. Grounds for divorce, irreconcilable differences. Proposal, full settlement, including partial asset transfer, spousal support, and property division. Each line felt like a blade carving through my chest, not because she wanted a divorce, but because everything had already been prepared, drafted, calculated, down to the tiniest detail of my financial portfolio, even the ones I'd never spoken to her about. Sophia hadn't written this draft alone. She had a lawyer, she had time, she had a plan, and more than anything, she had kept it all from me, every single word of it. I tried to steady myself. I reopened the email, checked the sender. It was from a law firm in New York, a boutique office known for handling high-asset divorces. The message had been forwarded from one of Sophia's alternate email accounts, and had accidentally CC'd her main address, the one I still had logged in on the iPad at home. I didn't know whether she'd realized her mistake. But I knew. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it. I just sat there, staring at the screen. The world around me faded. The only sound was the low hum of the ceiling vent and the cold glow of the laptop burning into my eyes. I scrolled down to the appendix. She had listed our joint investment accounts. She proposed a 60-40 split. Our current home, she wanted to keep it. A clause demanding 25% of dividends from my private equity fund as emotional compensation. One line made me laugh bitterly through clenched teeth. All assets acquired during the marriage reflect the joint efforts of both parties. That line, that was my line. I'd said it in an interview once when asked about the secret to my success. I told the reporter, "You can't separate my success from my wife's support. We're a team." And now, that very quote was being used as evidence against me. I shut the laptop. My eyes burned, my throat was dry, but I didn't scream, didn't smash the screen, didn't rage. I just sat there, because CEOs don't get to lose control, not even when a bomb has just gone off beneath their personal life. Sophia was somewhere in the house, maybe in the shower, maybe on a call, maybe smiling into someone's FaceTime. And I was here in my private home office, the same room where I'd closed multi-million-dollar deals, now gasping for air like a man who'd just been sucker-punched in the dark. No screaming, no warning, no fights, no tears. She didn't need any of it. All she needed was to plan well, hide better, and send one email to the wrong inbox, one wrong email, and my whole world collapsed. I don't remember how long I sat there, in that room. The glow of the laptop screen had faded, but in my mind, the words still burned, like they had been branded across my skull. Divorce petition, asset division, percentage breakdown, emotional compensation. Each phrase felt like a scalpel, cold, sharp, clinical, no emotion, just calculation. But I didn't break. I couldn't afford to, because if I let myself unravel now, everything I'd built could be swept away with me. I unlocked my phone and scrolled through an old contact list. There was a name I'd saved years ago, never thinking I'd actually need it. Ms. Elaine Sterling, attorney at law. I first heard of her 5 years ago when a former colleague of mine went through a brutal divorce. She helped him retain most of his equity, even though his ex had hired an aggressive Manhattan legal team. Sterling didn't scream or posture. She didn't need to. She worked like a scalpel, methodical, precise, and devastating, a velvet glove around an iron fist. I called. She still remembered me. We arranged to meet the next morning at her private office in Beacon Hill. No flashy signs, no polished reception desk, just a small brass plaque on frosted glass. Sterling Law and Asset Protection. She greeted me with a firm handshake and eyes that cut through the bullshit without ever being unkind. I told her everything, the email, the file, the timeline. I didn't cry, I didn't flinch. I reported it like a man reciting financial loss after a market crash. She listened, quietly. No interruptions, no fake sympathy. When I finished, she opened her laptop, typed a few lines, then looked up. "Do you know how long she's been preparing for this?" "I'd guess 3 months." "Wrong," she said. "Judging by the detail, the asset breakdown, and the phrasing of these clauses, this has been building for at least a year, possibly more. She's been collecting information slowly, every trip you took, every transaction you shared." I leaned back. My hands were ice. "So what do I do now?" She paused, her tone shifting into that calm, tactical rhythm that sounded less like law and more like war strategy. "First, understand the law. In Massachusetts, assets acquired during marriage are presumed to be marital property, unless you can prove they're separate. That includes anything earned before marriage or given as inheritance." "I have some investments seeded by my father before we were married," I replied. "Good. We'll need all documentation to support that." She continued, "I strongly advise you not to confront her yet. She doesn't know you've seen this, right?" I nodded. keep it that way. Suppress the urge to react. This is not the time for emotion. This is the time to build your defense, quietly, thoroughly, legally. I walked out of Sterling's office just as the November sky was dimming. Wind whipped down the empty streets, rattling leaves against pavement and tugging at my coat collar. But the coldest thing I felt that day wasn't the Boston air. It was the realization that the woman I once called my wife now saw me as an opponent to defeat. And I, with everything I'd built, was not going down without a fight. I didn't go back to the bedroom that night. Not out of rage, not out of heartbreak, but because I needed space, a room she hadn't tainted. I told Sophia I had a late report to finish for the upcoming board meeting. She nodded, offered a vague smile, then returned to her half-finished glass of red wine. She didn't ask questions, didn't look too long, and sometimes that kind of silence is the loudest confirmation. I went into my home office, the one I sometimes jokingly called the war room. A wide oak desk, 3 monitors, windows facing the garden. But tonight I wasn't looking at profit projections. I wasn't checking investor updates. I was looking for answers. I wanted to know how far she had gone and how blind I had been. I opened the first account, our shared checking account. In the past year, there had been 17 transfers to an unfamiliar auxiliary account. Each transfer was between $3,000 to $5,000. The notes were vague. Household expenses, home repair reserve, for sister. We weren't repairing anything, and Sophia didn't have a sister. Next, I reviewed our credit card activity. Designer items purchased from boutiques in New York. The kind she once said she was window shopping with friends. A life insurance policy I'd never approved, where I wasn't even listed as the beneficiary. The deeper I dug, the colder I felt. She didn't take much at once, but she was siphoning, slowly, strategically, a parallel financial operation hidden beneath the illusion of trust. I started building a spreadsheet. Column A, transaction date. Column B, amount. Column C, destination. Column D, notes from the statements. Column E, my concerns. I highlighted each suspicious transaction in red. From financial behavior, I pivoted to location history, matching where transactions occurred with the time she claimed she was at a spa, or with old friends, or visiting her grandmother. They didn't line up. Too many inconsistencies. I accessed the secondary email account, once visible on the iPad. She had told me it was just for online orders. But in the sent folder, there were at least five emails to a law firm, one name repeated, J. Green. The content, draft revisions of the divorce terms, instructions on asset transfer, guidance for setting up an offshore account. And just like that, the fog lifted. I didn't feel angry anymore, not even hurt. I felt clinical, like a breached system scanning for the entry point it once believed was secure. It was nearly 2 a.m. by the time I printed everything. The stack of pages sat almost an inch thick. I clipped them together. On the first page, I wrote in bold ink, the truth. Then I texted Sterling, I have the data. Can we meet tomorrow morning? She replied in under 5 minutes. 9 a.m., bring everything, and don't let her suspect anything. I stood up. My eyes were strained, but my mind had never been sharper. On my way to the kitchen, I passed our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. A soft golden glow spilled from the bedside lamp. I didn't look inside. I didn't need to. I didn't want to see the face I once trusted more than my own instinct. Instead, I paused in the hallway and unlocked my phone. I scrolled back to our earliest messages, ones I had saved for sentimental reasons. Wherever you go, I'll wait for you. You focus on work. I'll keep things steady at home. We're a team, right? At the time, those words meant everything. Now I realized we were a team, yes. But while I was playing offense, she was digging beneath the goalpost. I deleted the message and walked into the new day, not as a husband, but as a man entering the chessboard. Starting that morning, I began to act. Not in the dramatic, childish sense. This was a quiet performance, precise, measured, every word, every glance, every breath, calculated. I made Sophia her usual morning coffee, asked how she slept, suggested dinner plans for the weekend. She smiled, hesitated for a moment, then nodded, but her eyes lingered, just a bit too long. She was watching me. She wanted to see if I knew, and I gave her nothing. That morning, I spent 3 hours in Sterling's office. She reviewed the file I had compiled, page after page, transaction after transaction. She nodded slowly, making sharp annotations in the margins. Her voice was calm but firm. She's not stupid, but she got comfortable. She never expected you to keep your emotions in check. That right there is your biggest advantage. I didn't speak. It felt exactly like the start of a high-stakes negotiation, the kind where the other side thinks you're cornered until they realize every step they've taken has already been mapped out. Sterling continued, "If you agree, we'll initiate a pre-divorce mediation request. It'll look like you're also interested in separating on fair terms. That will draw out her real intentions." I nodded. Simple, clean, enough to shift the balance. When I got home later that evening, Sophia was cooking in the kitchen. I walked in as usual, slid my arms around her waist, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "Do you ever feel like we're so lucky it's suspicious?" She laughed, eyes flicking toward the stove. "Suspicious? Why?" "Because not everyone gets to trust someone completely for 12 years straight." I said it like a joke, but I saw it. That half-second pause in her eyes before she masked it again. "Well," she said, pouring me a glass of wine, "I'm still here, aren't I?" We had dinner, watched a movie we'd both seen a dozen times, talked casually about work. She didn't mention anything about divorce, not a word. She was waiting, certain that the next move would come from me. She believed she still had the upper hand. What she didn't know was that every move she made, I had already seen from behind the curtain. That night, when she went to bed, I stayed behind in the office. Sterling had sent me the first draft of the mediation request, short, tactical, carefully worded to look like the first olive branch, while quietly laying a legal trap. I read it 3 times, then texted back one word: send. I was no longer the man she thought I was, no longer blind, no longer passive, and no longer begging for trust. I now knew exactly who I was dealing with, and I understood something very clearly. To reclaim what's mine, I don't need to scream, I just need to move. In silence. The meeting was scheduled at Sterling's office, a divorce settlement discussion, at my request, but the only person in that room who knew it was a trap was me. Sophia walked in with her attorney, a sharp-looking woman with carefully curated confidence and the eyes of someone expecting to win. I nodded politely. No smile, no accusations. I sat still, silent, as if I were just an observer, not the man holding the blade. Sterling began, professional and measured. "Thank you both for coming. As initiated by Mr. Wright, today's meeting is to explore the possibility of resolving the divorce amicably, through direct negotiation rather than litigation." Sophia looked at me. Her gaze searched my face for any cracks, any signs. She still thought I was being generous. She had no idea I already knew everything. She spoke softly with a tone rehearsed to sound wounded. "I appreciate your willingness to handle this respectfully, Alex. I think no matter what, the most important thing is that we treat each other with dignity, even if we can't continue together." I nodded. I used to believe that too. Then I turned toward Sterling. She didn't say a word, just slid a folder across the table to Sophia's attorney. The woman opened it casually at first. Until the numbers began to appear, her expression shifted. Inside the folder, bank statements, email transcripts between Sophia and a New York divorce firm, transfer logs, a life insurance contract with a concealed beneficiary, evidence from a private investigator confirming the offshore account setup. Every document was indexed, every claim backed by statute, the kind of file that makes silence echo in a room. Sophia leaned forward, frowning. "You've been spying on me?" I looked her in the eye. "No, you left a trail." No yelling, no accusations, just the truth. Delivered at the right moment. She clutched her handbag tighter. Her lawyer whispered something urgently into her ear. I said nothing. I just sat there like a CEO watching a contract collapse because the other side didn't read the fine print. Sterling tapped her pen lightly on the table. "Given the evidence, my client has sufficient grounds to request that the court designate most of the marital assets as separate property. In addition, we may pursue legal action for financial misconduct during the marriage." Sophia didn't respond, but her composure had cracked. The calm, collected woman who thought she held the strings was unraveling. We sat in silence for a few moments. Then I spoke, calmly but clearly. "I didn't come here to punish you. I came to end this, without either of us pretending anymore." Sophia said nothing. She just sat there, fists clenched tighter, and for the first time she wasn't the one in control. Sterling called the night before the final hearing. Her voice was lower than usual, lacking its usual razor-sharp composure. "I need you to check something. You might not want to know this, but I think you have to." She sent me a file, an internal financial report from last year, forwarded anonymously by someone from our old audit department. The subject line was brief. "Irregular transfer, April, flagged under Sophia Wright." I opened it. At first glance, just numbers, routine. A transfer of $50,000 to an auxiliary account dated April, but then came the line that made my hands go cold. Funding source, emergency corporate reserve, requested by Alexander Wright, executed by Sophia Wright, temporary authorization, electronic signature. I froze. I never approved that transfer, and I never authorized Sophia to act on behalf of the company. I pulled up the internal approval system, logged in, tracked the transaction. There it was. The signature was perfect, identical to mine. But it wasn't mine. It was a scanned version of an old form Sophia once helped me file during a rushed business trip. I remember handing it to her without thinking, just another line in a day packed with meetings. And now, it had been used to withdraw funds from the very company I had built from nothing. I didn't call Sterling. I didn't tell anyone. I stood up, walked to my home office, opened the drawer where I'd once found that USB, where all of this had started. Then I opened the windows, let the cold night air hit me, and for the first time since this all began, I broke. Not because I'd been betrayed, not because of the money, but because I finally realized I had been living in an illusion for over a decade. I, Alexander Wright, who'd negotiated 9-figure deals, forecasted market crashes, and been labeled by Forbes as the strategist who never blinked, hadn't seen the one person closest to me stealing from the life we shared. I collapsed onto the floor, face buried in my hands, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man. I felt lost. I didn't bring that evidence to court. I didn't sue her for criminal fraud, didn't press charges. I sealed the report in a manila envelope, locked it in the safe, because I knew some wounds don't need courtroom validation. They testify for themselves every time you close your eyes. The next morning, I arrived at court as usual. Sophia sat there, calm and composed. But I was different. I wasn't there to win. I wasn't there to punish her. I was there to end a chapter I had let someone else write for far too long. The final hearing was held on a gray Monday morning, Boston's sky low and brooding, as if nature itself was weighing what was right and what was not. I arrived at court on time, no suit, just a black sweater, gray slacks, and a navy overcoat. Simple but steady, enough for a place where reason ruled over sentiment. Sophia was already there, seated one row ahead. She didn't look at me, I didn't look at her. Between us was a silence so thick it felt rehearsed, like two people who'd been strangers long before they admitted it. The past 3 weeks had been the longest of my life, not because I was afraid, but because I was waiting. and I'd learned that sometimes waiting is the most brutal kind of justice. The ruling didn't take long. Based on the submitted evidence, bank statements, email records, legal correspondence, and most critically, the undisclosed transfer of marital assets, the judge ruled that Sophia had breached the principle of transparency required in all marital financial conduct, which meant the majority of the investment portfolio, including stocks, retirement funds, and pre-marital assets, was recognized as separate property under my sole ownership. The house would be sold, and proceeds divided 80-20 in my favor. Sophia was granted only minimal post-divorce support, mandated by state guidelines. The judgment was clean, sharp, delivered without commentary or hesitation. I didn't feel triumphant, I just felt still. Sophia left first. She didn't look back. Her beige trench coat hung neatly over her shoulders, heels clicking on the marble floor, each step a fading echo down the long hallway. I stood there for a moment watching her disappear around the corner, not with regret, but with the kind of quiet finality you feel when you watch the last page of a story turn and know you'll never reopen that book again. She moved out of the house a week later. No drama, no notice. She left her keys on the kitchen counter, the same counter where weeks ago I had found a forged financial document. I didn't ask where she was going, didn't care. Once I mourned the loss of a wife, but now I understood. What I'd really missed was the illusion of knowing the person sleeping next to me. Sterling emailed me 2 days after the ruling. We didn't win, we simply protected what was yours. But staying composed through betrayal, that's a victory in itself. I read that line several times, then replied, "Thank you for not letting me become a man who seeks revenge." The company was still waiting for my return. The boardroom, the investors, the next project, all still there. But I asked for 2 more weeks off, not to run away, but to clean up, not the furniture, the memories. I threw out the wedding album, the anniversary cards, the little sticky notes that once made me smile. I kept one thing, a small hand-drawn map Sophia made for me during our first year of marriage. It marked the bakery she liked, the park where I ran, and the little cafe where she once waited for me in the rain. I didn't keep it because I missed her. I kept it as a punctuation mark, a gentle period at the end of a story told wrong. That night I sat alone in the living room, no music, no news, just a glass of whiskey and the warm glow of the floor lamp, reflecting off polished hardwood floors. And I wondered, was there someone out there, sitting alone in a room just like this, who had just lost something they thought was forever, and yet somehow felt lighter? If there is, I hope they know this. Sometimes you don't have to win. Sometimes surviving with your soul intact is enough. I used to think that the end of a marriage would come with a slammed door, a flood of tears, or a screaming match where someone finally yells, "I can't do this anymore." But no, the real end came in silence. One morning I woke up, went downstairs, opened the fridge, and realized there was no glass of freshly squeezed orange juice, no coat draped across the back of a chair, no faint trace of her perfume in the hallway. There was just me, and a house wide enough to hear the sound of my own breathing. It took me 2 weeks to get used to the emptiness, not to fill it, but to accept that it now belonged to me. I woke up later, made my own coffee, did push-ups in the yard instead of the basement gym. I learned how to grocery shop for the first time in over a decade. Standing in the produce aisle, I felt like a lost kid, staring at vegetables like they were written in another language. I texted Mark, my friend who had stood by me without a word of judgment. "You free tonight? I want to try cooking something. Can't promise it'll be good." He replied in 4 seconds, "If it sucks, we'll order pizza." We ate on the rooftop balcony, city lights flickering below us, cold air brushing our collars, and I realized something. Some things never come back, but others only reveal their value after something else is gone. One morning I walked into the same cafe near the park, where Sophia and I had our first married year breakfast. The owner, an older woman with graying hair, still remembered my usual black Americano, no sugar. At the window seat, a woman was reading a book, hair tied back, no phone in sight. Just her and the pages. The morning sun rested on her face like peace itself. I didn't say anything, just watched quietly, and felt something soften inside me. Not because she was beautiful, but because, for the first time since everything fell apart, I looked at a woman and didn't carry a ghost with me. I returned to the company in week 3. The board meeting felt like nothing had changed. I signed documents, led updates, and received nods of respect from people who once only saw me as a numbers-driven CEO. That afternoon, Sterling called. "How are you holding up?" "I think I'm starting to live again," I said. Then, after a pause, I asked, "Do you think it's possible to love someone again?" She was quiet for a moment, then said calmly, "You don't have to answer that today." That night, I didn't turn on the lights in the living room. I sat in the dark, the street lamp outside casting a faint pattern across the hardwood floor. I thought about everything I had lost: a wife, a belief, a dream of a forever home. And then I thought about what I still had: myself, my integrity, my ability to love. Not someone in particular, not yet, but the possibility of loving again. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. The next morning, I opened my laptop and cleaned out my personal folders, deleted old photos, archived the divorce files, created a new folder, named it version 2.0, not broken, just rebuilt. And I smiled, not the smile of a man who had won, but of a man who had crawled out of wreckage and was still standing. I don't know what the future holds. I don't need to. All I know is, from this moment forward, I'm not living to protect someone else's version of love. I'm living to choose myself again.